All right. Well, I just dropped in the chat. Feel free to let us know where you're joining us from. I think we're a few minutes after the hour, so we could go ahead and get started. All right, I'll kick off intros. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Anna Haney. I'm the Director of Business Product Management for Unit Grants, which was formerly eCivis. I have 7 years experience in the public sector between Maricopa County and the state of Arizona. With the state of Arizona, I managed multiple statewide grant programs and oversaw hundreds of subrecipients. Most recently with the state, I worked for the Governor's Office of Strategic Planning and Budget with our Grants and Federal Resources team, where we managed statewide programs, most notably, of course, the COVID funding that came in 2020. From there, I moved over to Unisolutions. I've been with the company now for 3 years, working on the grants product. And my focus here is currently on our business strategy and vision for our unit grants product and ensuring that the grants solution meets our customers' needs. So happy to be here today and happy to meet you all. Anthony, do you want to kick it off next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anna, and nice to meet everyone. Again, we will get everyone talking before this is all said and done. It's a forewarning, but I'm Anthony, so I'm the Director of Business Product Management for Unit Procurement, which is composed of products that you might know as Bonfire, IronWave, Demand Star, and very recently Equal Level. So much like Anna, I'm in charge of making sure that the procurement product under Unit is meeting the needs of our customers and making sure that that we're helping people buy stuff as best as we can. And I'm excited to chat about how procurement and grants can work better together today. Deanna, I'll pass it off to you to introduce yourself.
Great. Good morning. I'm Deanna Christensen. I'm the Director of Finance here with the City of Modesto. I have about 21 years of public finance experience, and I've been with City of Modesto for almost about 15 years. City of Modesto just became eCivics grant user. It's been a little less than a year. And we're also exploring the potential functions of the procurement side as well. Currently, Modesto does a very manual process when it comes to all of our bidding procedures when it comes to procurement. But again, I've been in the role of, filling out a financial claim to get reimbursed for grants, as well as now in the role of just, ensuring grant management compliance within our organization, as well as all of the federal requirements, such as with the ARPA funding, and then as well as with our single audit requirements that we have to do every year. So I'm welcome to join the roundtable today and look forward to the discussion.
Great. And just as a reminder, there's a few of us on the call here. So Alwyn, Denise, Michael, Zach, feel free to come off mute, join the conversation. I'm hoping that everyone's here to take something maybe specific from this, or maybe you're just here to listen along. But you have the opportunity just to chat, whether that's off mute, whether that's in the Q&A section, wherever you're most comfortable. But I think it'll be more fun the more people who are participating.
All right, I'll jump in. Anthony and Deanna, feel free to add. So why is this such an important topic right now? Why are we talking about optimizing funding and procurement? Like Anthony mentioned, definitely the alignment between grants and procurement. As you all know, there's rapidly changing requirements both for grants and procurement. Traditional processes have trouble keeping up. I was in the public sector when the COVID-19 crisis started, and that money came fast and furious, both for grants and a lot of procurement purchasing of supplies and PPE and things of that sort. And that really moves on to a wide range of scenarios. So, COVID-19 is probably one of the biggest disasters that's happened, but oftentimes there's a lot of disaster funding for hurricanes, fires, things of that sort. And those come at all different times. Oftentimes grants and procurement activities are reactive. And so how can you get ahead of that? How can you help build your policies and procedures and check your internal controls to make sure that you're not reactive, that when that disaster happens, you are proactive and you already know what you need to do. Anything to add to that, Anthony or Deanna, for why it's so important right now?
I think, Anna, you captured a lot of things that, again, we're dealing with the COVID funding. Here in Modesto, we always run into the challenge of, we have our city departments that, actively, are pursuing these grants, and we have a centralized purchasing division within finance, and it's just making sure kind of everyone's on the same page with milestones and, based on the procurement needs that need to be purchased, and just kind of managing and prioritizing everybody's needs, and still, again, ensuring compliance with what's required when it comes to the procurement rules, and also ensuring, it aligns with the rules defined in your organization's policy, because in most cases, whichever policies govern the more stricter rules, those are the ones that we comply with. So it's just making sure everybody's on the same page. We all are aware of what the key milestones are, just to ensure we meet those key goals for these grant funded projects.
All right, so our first question, what are key challenges in aligning grants management and procurement? Deanna, do you want to kick us off for the first question?
No, not a problem. I kind of keyed into it. It's just, a lot of challenges. It's just the communication and the coordination with the grant managers. And like I mentioned, with our organization, we do have a centralized procurement division. So it's just, again, making sure, we understand what the procurement needs are for all of these core grants, understanding, what the rules are, just, making sure if there's training opportunities that arise. It's just making sure that information is being filtered from the grant manager that's getting all of the information from the grant agency, and that's being filtered down to the procurement team. That's one of the areas. And then, like I said, it's just making sure everyone understands what those milestone dates are. Sometimes, again, it's not clearly communicated on when, certain grant periods end and when certain procurement purchases need to occur. And it's just, again, making sure everyone's on the same page of what those core dates are, and this making sure it aligns with the priorities with other areas. Because again, it's all about competitive, accomplishments, because a lot of my buyers here within our procurement deal with more than one department, and usually every one of those departments have grant projects that are competing, who goes first. So it's just, again, making sure everyone is in agreement with those timelines are, the complexity of the purchase that's being made, and just, again, making sure that we're complying with what those procurement goals are.
Yeah, thanks, Deanna. I mean, what you mentioned, I feel like so many of the challenges that I hear about when I'm speaking to procurement teams are, doc retention, the reporting, of course, and then that timeline management process. What we've seen, and it's so simple, but it has made a big difference, is just having something as simple as just a checklist artifact of like, here's every single thing we need to do. Here are all the key dates that we have defined, and just making sure that both procurement and grants and anyone else have access to that. I'm coming at this mostly from a procurement perspective too, but in the pre-award process, sometimes we see some tension around, to follow up on a second thing you said, right? There's all these competing priorities. There's different grant sources, grant dollars that are flowing in. How does procurement prioritize what to do or what not to do? Or doing one thing very often comes at the cost of another thing. What we've seen, or what I've seen other agencies do that's worked really well, is in that pre-award process, just prioritizing what grants we're going after and how they align with what the procurement plan actually is. And ideally, both of those two items are in lockstep with what the actual government agency needs or what the community needs. But I think every department is feeling resource constrained to some degree. So as a response to that resource constraint, how do we make sure that what we are choosing to prioritize are things that we know we're going to be able to progress? So if grants is whatever sources they might be applying for, looking for an award for, bringing in procurement into that conversation just so they can understand, well, what type of resources do we actually have in procurement so we can go ahead and administer that grant? And based on what the potential award might be, do we actually have the resources to do whatever that process might be, right? It'd be different if it's a contractor versus if it's a subrecipient, right? So I think just talking earlier and more often is something that we've seen a lot of procurements do, or a lot of procurement teams do with success to work more collaboratively with grants. But yeah, those are the main things from my side.
Anthony, I was gonna definitely add in, like you said, the difference between a subrecipient and a vendor. So I think oftentimes, I know from my experience at the state, state procurement laws are very well written. They're in rules and everyone understands them. When it comes to grants, especially if they're federal grants, there are a different set of rules, and oftentimes you have different staffing challenges, maybe individuals who are only doing procurement or only doing grants or don't know the differences between the two, or default to procurement rules when really you should look at it and say, is this really a procurement or is it a grant, a subrecipient relationship, right? And actually not go down that procurement path. But sometimes I know we've seen where it's a little bit too late. They're already following procurement. They're not really procuring goods and services. They're actually carrying out programmatic activities. And so it actually should go down that subrecipient path instead. But a lot of that is, training challenges and things of that sort to educate the staff.
Mm-hmm. I think even like there's like even for some federal dollars, right? There's exemptions for like, we actually don't need to compete this because of this specific thing. Like really it adds to the complexity just for how many different variables there are to be considered. But again, the one thing that I would say that also is helpful from the procurement lens specifically is just having good documentation on what those policies and procedures are. So this way, when there is a doubt, we can go ahead and look at them. But of course, it also falls on the procurement team to educate the grants management team or any other end user department about, hey, these are the rules that we're playing by, and we need to make sure that everyone feels that they're aware of what they are. From your side, Anne, is there anything that you would add is a major challenge?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the understanding the different rules and regulations, right? Of particularly federal grants, and when do you have to competitively bid? When do you not have to? I am part of NGMA, the National Grant Management Association, and so I get a lot of the feeds of questions, and there's just a ton of questions from staff around some of the rules and regulations and uniform guidance. And I know they're working on updating uniform guidance, but federal guidance is not always the easiest to interpret. And then you get directors involved and legal involved and a lot of people at the table that kind of interpret things to a little bit of their own understanding.
And again, for our attendees in the chat, if there's anything else that like, hey, this is something that I'm struggling with, or I'm looking to get perspective on this, come off mute, throw something in chat, or you can just keep on listening. But again, I'm committed to getting someone up to talk whose video isn't on. It doesn't have to happen now, but okay, I'm talking, so maybe I'll introduce the second question. And Deanna, we'll queue you up here as our spotlight expert. But the second question is, how can agencies ensure grants management and procurement processes are adaptable enough to respond to a wide range of scenarios? So Deanna, what's your take on that?
I think when it comes to this question, again, it goes back to, the core of, again, the processes and policies that are incorporated and whether it provides the enough flexibility to address the different types of scenarios that we deal with. Just again, as we mentioned, every grant has different requirements, different specifics, and then again, depending on whether goods and services are being purchased or procured, again, it all triggers the adaptability of just ensuring that we have the process is incorporated to address those different scenarios. And then, one thing that we've incorporated at Modesto is just the constant training. So we actually provide kind of like monthly, kind of just general updates, just based on different scenarios that we run into within the organization. Because, someone's situation might fall into another department's scenario and situation. So just being able to provide guidance and direction, and just, again, making sure that staff has the appropriate resources to just, again, be able to share that information and that wealth of knowledge across the organization, but just, again, providing scenarios to have that open communication, and then just the constant training to be able to communicate the processes, and just, again, provide the different situations that we all run into within the organization.
Good point. And I would add to that, Deanna, as well as like having those policies and procedures written down, but then also annually reviewing them, or reviewing them on some cadence, right? Because you may have them, but maybe they're outdated, or, from guidance was updated. And so you need to update your processes and procedures to map to that. It's always a good start to have them, and then also like review them on a regular cadence so that you don't find yourself out of date with maybe what you were doing, or it changed if you purchase a software system, or people change, processes change. Just having some sort of cadence built into your office procedures to review those.
Cool. Something that I heard, and you can tell me if this is valid or not, but again, I'm talking to procurement teams about, how they keep this alignment together. And something that one of the teams mentioned was like, there's so much responsibility on us as a grants management team, or us as a procurement team. But like, there's this third party, that this one agency, they said they'd lean on a lot, which is like the grant issuer. Like, the grant issuer wants us to do things the right way. They want us to be able to spend dollars compliantly. And, like, if there's a reporting change in regulations, like there was with the ARPA funds, like, you can just talk to the grant issuer in a way to get some perspective on like, well, are we doing this right, or what should we be doing differently? Again, that's from a procurement team. So Anna or Deanna, tell me if that's sound advice. You can definitely say maybe not, but
No, it's good advice. And, to Anna's point, we actually incorporated something because of the challenges with regulations and things constantly being updated, where we were able to identify a software solution where, we actually store, again, it's a central record keeping of all of our policies, procedures, and it gives us a way to, again, have that central location. It also incorporates a review process that we can review our policies and procedures on an annual basis. And then it also ensures that it pushes out those updated policies and procedures through the organization. So that way, again, there's ways that we can, again, make staff aware of what changes have been made based on the constant updates that we're making to these policies and procedures. So it has been a huge life-saving and just efficiency to just making sure we are on top of those constant changes that I'm sure every organization is dealing with the regulations and just general procedure updates that we have to make.
cool. Well, we're going to throw up a poll here, and for our attendees, there should be a option to select which one of these is your largest concern when it comes to being responsive to change. So that's easily finding and applying to grants, distributing funds appropriately, balancing speed, thoroughness, and compliance, having enough people to support, or something else. Tell us in chat, or again, if you're brave enough to talk into the mic with us.
The poll is now open on your screen. If you have a moment, just choose one of the answers that best applies, and then we will end the poll in just a moment.
All right, the poll has closed and we're at a pretty 50-50 split. Half of the poll responders said that it's balancing speed, thoroughness, and compliance. That's really what the main challenge is. And half people said that having enough people to support that's the main challenge. Any comments on that or any surprises from either of you on these results?
I think staffing is always a challenge. I feel like it's something that we've been talking about for so long. You kind of saw it increase with COVID, uh, the COVID crisis, a lot of early retirements, things of that sort. But I think staffing in agencies is just, it's been an issue when I was there years ago. And I think it's something that we always tried to work towards, like, okay, we know staffing's a problem. How do we get kind of career progression and things of that sort to keep people involved? But I feel like that's something that we just always are running into, even in the private sector, we always have staffing issues.
And it's just making sure, because of the staffing issues and the turnover that, we're all dealing with, it's just making sure whoever comes in to step in the shoes to fill, those functions have the adequate documentation and training so that they can quickly get up to speed to address, all the compliance requirements and procedures that we can.
Right.
Well, go ahead, Anna, you can kick this one off.
All right, moving on to question 3. So how can local governments create better communication and collaboration across grants and procurement functions for a more responsive process? So a couple of my thoughts were, again, just ensuring that the staff that you're working with. Some of our agencies are really large, at the state level. Agencies like Department of Health, Department of Public Safety, they're really, really large agencies, and they have lots of procurement teams, lots of grant staff. Like Deanna mentioned, like meeting regularly with those teams, ensuring that you know who they are, what departments they are. So that way, when you have something come up, you know exactly who to call. And you're aligning on what you're working towards, what policies and procedures, and making sure that everybody's on the same page. I think a lot of times it feels like you're herding cats a lot, but that's probably part of the job. It's just making sure that we're all on the same page with everyone.
I couldn't agree more. As I mentioned earlier, our hired staff, they all are assigned specific departments. So we've incorporated where we have regular standing monthly meetings, both with the buyer and the departments that again oversee the grant components, and literally they will go over the bid list of the procurement purchases that are being worked on, whether that's getting a formal bid or proposal out or soliciting quotes. It's something that has to go through our council for approval, but just identifying again what those proposed dates are that the buyer is currently working on achieving. And again, as things potentially shift, part of that ongoing communication during those monthly meetings could be to shift priorities, or, acknowledging that maybe something changed on the grant, they're asking for an amendment, and now they know that there's additional time available. But it's just very important that those standing monthly meetings occur, so that way everybody is on the same page in regards to what's being focused on, what's being worked on. And when those changes do occur, everybody is in the loop of what those changes are. But that to me is the only way you're going to ensure that you have that better communication, and both the grants and procurement functions are all kind of working off of the same goals when it comes to meeting those milestones for the grants.
I don't really have too much to add to that. I think that was awesome. Maybe some type of a pre-award process. I think I'll continue to emphasize getting folks talking earlier is always going to be better. So just building that into part of like, hey, we're applying for this, which will allow us to do this. Let's loop in procurement so we can understand, assuming it's going to be a contractor relationship, so we can understand and resource for that.
Yeah, it's a good point, Anthony. I would say, just quickly on the last point on question 3 is having a actual grant strategy. Coming from the state budget office, we would get into budget season and agencies would be like, I need, a grant for this. And it's like, well, it's June and grants aren't open in June. They don't just open when you need them, right? You need to plan out. And so having that strategy of like, what do we actually need? And are there grants for it, or are we going to use general fund or some other source of dollars? And if there are grants, particularly when you're buying pieces of equipment and things of that sort, ensuring that you're bringing procurement people in early so that they know that they do need to do these purchases, and ensure that they're ready to do so. Awesome. All right. I'm off mute, so I'll just keep going. Question 4. How can technology help streamline grant application and allocation as well as procurement processes? So I can kick it off, and then Deanna, Anthony, feel free to jump in. So a couple different things. So you can, of course, automate your entire, for the grant side of the grant application process of intaking applications from subrecipients, your application review, your post-award functions. It helps remove some of the manual paperwork and emailing of documents. And on the other side, if you are the agency going and pursuing grants and submitting applications, there's also software that can help align on that grant strategy, track your goals and metrics, track which grants you're applying to, what departments they belong to, how much funding is outstanding, things of that sort, so that you can really have a full picture of your grant strategy. Anthony, anything to add, or Deanna, anything to add on that?
Yeah, maybe I'll let Deanna speak to it first, and then I can speak to the procurement stuff, which is going to be more post-award, and then obviously the reporting stuff. So Deanna, why don't you start or continue?
I think Anna nailed a lot of it. Was just, again, trying to improve a lot of the manual processes and just, identify just poor efficiencies to the overall process. It's just, to me, easier to filter through research when you have the full life cycle streamlined through, core technology. Again, when we rolled out, e-civics with our organization, it was like, we were using, PDF forms for documenting application approval requests, Excel, Word, everything was being saved in everybody's file. And now everything is now centralized, located, and again, from start to finish of the full life cycle of applying, researching for the grants, up all the way through award. And then again, now we're in the process, because you only can manage so much at once, but now we are evaluating our procurement process, because same thing, right now we are doing a lot of things manually. All of our bids and proposals for these grants are still being done through hard copy. So it's just, trying to look at ways we can utilize technology to alleviate so much manpower and manual processes that are being managed, as well as the document retention, and just, again, making sure that we're maintaining the requirements of the grants for that retention period, and knowing it's all centralized just makes the process more easier to manage and ensuring that compliance is being met.
Awesome, thanks, Deanna. I guess just continuing on with how technology can help specifically in the procurement process. Of course, Unisolutions has procurement offerings that can automate the entirety of the process, from creating the document up until awarding it and managing the resulting contract. But as it relates to the specific application, which is, the intersection between grants and procurement, I think there's two really key things about how technology can help, right? So of course, especially when you're looking at federal grants, right? Like uniform guidance is going to tell you what you can, shouldn't be doing, and whatever other federal policies. They'll inform about what terms and conditions do we pass through, or what times do we not pass through those terms and conditions. So having a library of templates, or a library of boilerplates where you can just start off on the right foot for, oh, this is this type of grant, so that means we should be using this pass-through term and condition, or this is this type of grant, which means we should be doing this. You can create a library of all those different workflows to say, okay, great, here's what we're doing based on the award. Let's start off on the right foot, and let's bring everyone together so we can iterate on that document and get it out to the market. Of course, I think the other key thing, which is where so many teams, when there is a procurement process that's required through the grant award process, it's on the reporting. So being able to facilitate the workflow is good because it allows us to have more resources, it allows for automation. But I think like the real benefit is by virtue of running a process fully online, excuse me, that also means you get access to that reporting with a click of a button as well. If we want to understand what was our participation or our small business utilization, like that's something that we can uncover. If we want to understand what are the evaluation steps that we went through to make this recommended award for this contractor, that's something we can uncover with very easily. So I think a lot of teams spend a lot of time pulling together components of a manual procurement process to create this report manually. So automating one inherently automates the other, and I think that's just a huge time saver and a huge risk mitigator, because we're not losing data. There's nothing that's lost in translation. Everything just exists in the platform. I can sort of get too into weeds on procurement stuff, but that's that is my background. Oh, we have another poll. So the poll says, what aspect of procurement and grants do you want to streamline with tech? So automating repetitive, tedious tasks, applying for, allocating, and monitoring funding, improve communication and collaboration across functions, document and version control, compliance management, or something else, which you can tell us in chat. So the poll is live, so go ahead and click in with what you think. Denise, all of the above. Oh, tell us more about that, Denise. If you're so inclined. I think while we're on this, there's a very common issue that we see where I think sometimes it's difficult to, using technology will allow us to do more, but sometimes it's hard to rationalize those upfront costs when it comes to making that decision. Deanna, I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on. Is obviously you're involved with getting e-Civis in place, and I'm sure you approved it. But what was that process like at the city of Modesto, if you don't mind sharing?
When it comes to the grant selection or just the implementation of the technology?
Yeah, just for the grant selection process, like how are you able to say, hey, identify a need and make that business case where this is an investment that we need to make?
When we started exploring the option, we just knew the current manual process that we had in place, that there had to be a better way to manage it. Because as I mentioned, there wasn't a central record keeping of, what grants were out there, as staff turnover happens, not knowing, what grants that, program manager might have been assigned to. So as we explored the different technologies that were out there, we wanted to ensure that, it addressed all components for the full life cycle of the grants. What was out there to help, with the research process of identifying grants, and then, through the application process, being able to, incorporate other departments to provide feedback, all the way through the application process. So I think that was the core thing we were looking at. We wanted the process more efficient. We wanted to be able to manage everything from the grant management through the solution. And based on what we observed, e-Civics was the one that provided the most user-friendly and provided, the core of those components that we were looking for.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure for folks who are answering this question, what I hear so much is I don't know where to start. So hopefully that experience just gives some perspective on what to look for, what to think about. From the poll that we have, it's pretty well split again. So we have Some of our audience saying improved communication and collaborative across functions. The other cohort says compliance management. And again, Denise said all of the above and then added, we want a user-friendly single management program that can do the entire workflow needed and ease of customization by staff. From your perspective, Anna, anything here jump out to you?
I think kind of to add to your first question of how do you essentially show the ROI and or the business use case for a system, right? I know one thing that we did at the state was take a look at how many grants systems each agency or all the state agencies had, and it turned out there was like over 30 different grant management systems being used. And so, your dollars are being split, right? This agency is going to this software, that agency is going to another software. And how do you pull together to have actually the buying power that the state has to purchase a system and use public dollars the most efficiently, right? By having one software that all agencies should use that hits all the things, or at least the 80-20 rule, 80% of what everyone needs. Really, I think aligned with a lot of what our directors were interested in is, reducing the redundancy amongst and the duplicative softwares that people have, and trying to go towards one system to really save on those public dollars.
Cool. Okay. And since I'm talking, I'll bring up what will be our last question. So folks who have thoughts of their own, start typing in chat because we'll be able to address them very soon. But question 5 is, how can agencies maintain balance between urgency and responsive processes and transparency? Oh, excuse me, I enunciated this the wrong way. How can agencies maintain balance between urgency and responsive processes and transparency and accountability? So those two things on either side. I'm curious to see what everyone else has to say about this, but my take was, I don't know if you can, right? It's like, I think I'll lead it to the folks who are more involved in grant management to think about it, but nothing can really come at the expense of anything for transparency and accountability, right? Like in my perspective, that feels like that's what is dependent on whether you have clawback or whether you can get the grant funds the next year. Like you just need to get that part of it right. So it's really about finding ways to equip yourself with resources to do more, whether that's through technology or through people or through whatever it might be. But I just don't know if you can, I don't know if it's a game of give and take versus like, we need to do transparency and accountability and we'll do the best we can with whatever we can with those two things driving it. But what do the others think?
That's a great point, Anthony. I think you have to do both, but you can't forego the urgency and responsive need, right, of the communities. One thing that we really kept in mind when I was a program manager was the end result. So we all know that transparency and accountability is something that is really highlighted, particularly most recently. And so as we would create a program, particularly with COVID funding, it would be, one of the questions we kind of checked, we'd have a checklist, and one of it would be like, what is the data we need to collect about this program to tell the story? So we have a program for rental assistance. What 5 items do we need? And make sure that that's built into the program. If you're purchasing goods and services with that grant, what are we purchasing and how is that furthering the program? And it doesn't have to be super, lengthy, but just at least keeping that in mind as you're creating these grant programs or as you're looking to purchase different items, I think helps as well with that Transparency Act, because I feel like the transparency and accountability always comes at the end, right? Everyone wants to know, what did you do? Okay, this happened. What did you do? And so I think keeping that in mind, just as a quick checkpoint, like on a checklist, like what are we going to say? What do we want the end story to be for this program? Can also kind of help keep that in mind.
And I think for Modesto, we always try to align the grants with, the council's priorities and the goals that have been set through our strategic plan. So again, it's just making sure that everything aligns with those goals. And then to Anna's point about, once you get the end result, it's how that messaging gets to the community. And, a lot of times, we take these items to council and a lot of it is just so foreign that the public doesn't fully understand how it's benefiting them in the community. So it's just very important that when we share the end result and what value it provides the community, that it's in a language that, again, the community understands the benefit, and then, you know, that addresses to me the transparency and the accountability. Because, you know, we recently had a tax measure that was approved, and that's the big thing that we're trying to work on our messaging is, you know, we want to make sure that the community understands, you know, what they're getting for, you know, with an increase in tax dollars. And I see the grants in the same manner. Is, again, we want to show the benefit of what it provides the community, whether that's, you know, enhancing a park or, you know, our roadways. But it's just very important that they understand it and that message gets out.
Thanks, everyone. Well, we're right on track. 15 minutes for Q&A for anyone who is interested in asking questions to the experts. Of course, if you want to ask anything about procurement, I can help. But anything from the chat? Anyone want to come off and say anything?
Both the chat box and the Q&A is open, so please feel free to type anything in there if you do not feel comfortable coming off of mute.
All right, I think we've applied enough awkward silence technique to everyone here just to see if anyone has anything to say. Of course, if you do have any questions about any of the offerings or want to get in touch with us, there's our LinkedIn's, add us, send us messages, do whatever you want to do. But I appreciate everyone joining. And thank you for the feedback, Michael. Yeah, thanks everyone for participating, and yeah, we'll be in touch later.
Have a
Thank you
good
all.
day. Thank you.